Hey nerdy knitter, are you a new knitter looking for your next knitting project? I've got you covered in today's video. We're going to look at 10 different shawl patterns, really simple ones that are perfect for beginner knitters. Some are really basic and easy to follow. Some might have you stretch your abilities just a little bit and learn some new techniques. But before we look at those, I just want to say, hey, I'm Tanya here at Nerdy Knitting. I'm a certified knitting instructor and a knitwear designer, and my goal is to help you become a more confident, adventurous knitter. Rectangular shawls and wraps are some of my favorite shawls to knit and to wear. They're so fun to knit, they're really easy to knit, and there's so many different great ways to wear them as well. So you'll find lots of good uses for your rectangle shawls. The first one's the Guernsey Wrap from Brooklyn Tweed. I really like this one. It has lots of different classic textures that you'll see in Guernsey or fisherman sweaters. Now this large oversized wrap has lots of different stitch patterns, but all of them are very simple, just knit and purl. So as long as you can knit and purl, then you can tackle these stitch patterns. Now this is a great way to practice reading charts. If this is a new process for you, this would be a good choice because again, it's just knit and purl stitches. So you can practice reading charts and look at your stitches as you work them, and you'll see how those patterns line up and how they work together. And this pattern comes in two yarn weights, DK and worsted. It's also reversible, so when you're wrapping it around your neck or around your shoulders, both sides are going to look just lovely. Then we have the polka dot scarf from Churchmouse yarns, and I'm just in love with this one. I'm a fan of polka dots and eyelets, and this is just a lovely simple wrap to knit. It comes in two sizes. It's knit in a lace weight yarn, but it's just stockinette stitch, so you're knitting on the right side rows, purling on the wrong side rows, and then these large polka dot eyelets for just a little bit of interest. Now this one does use a provisional cast on, so if that's something you want to learn, then this is a good chance to do that. Then we have the elementary wrap from Purl Soho. Now this is another really simple stockinette stitch based design, so very easy to knit, knitting on the right side rows, purling on the wrong side rows, and there's a little simple edging that's just knit and purl, just to add a little edging to that stockinette stitch so it doesn't roll too much. And you're using a light worsted or a DK weight yarn, so this one will knit up a little more quickly than that polka dot scarf, and it's also a free pattern. Then there's Second Avenue by Amy Miller. This one's a lot of fun with lots of color and texture going on here, but nothing really difficult. We have some stripes, so you're using a few different colors to make these stripes. Some of them are very narrow, some of them are more wide. Then we have some stockinette with some textured rows in there, and then a section of eyelets and a little bit of pretty lace edging at each end. So nothing that's super complicated, still fairly simple, but lots of fun. Now this one uses 5 colors of yarn in a fingering weight. Then we have the Cashmere Ombre wrap from Purl Soho. Now you have a few choices with this really pretty wrap. You can choose between two different textured stitch patterns. You can choose a basic classic seed stitch or a textured rib. Both of them are going to knit up really quickly and be just beautiful. And it comes in 2 yarn weights as well. You have a fingering weight or a sport weight yarn. Now this ombre pattern is worked with 8 colors of yarn, and you can even purchase the full kits from Purl Soho. They include all the yarn that you'll need with the colors pre-selected for you. Then there's the European Road Trip Shawl from Espace Tricot. Now, if you want to try your hand at bias knitting, where increases and decreases are used to get the stitch pattern, in this case, it's just basic stockinette stitch, to move on a bias, then this is a good place to start. You're still doing just simple stockinette, knitting on the right side rows, purling on the wrong side rows. So all you have to really pay attention to are those increases and decreases for the shaping. This is a great introduction to bias knitting. Then there's Afternoon in Lisbon from Lisa Hands. Now, if you're feeling adventurous and you want to explore some color knitting outside of stripes, then mosaic knitting is a great way to start. It uses 2 colors, but you're never using more than 1 color at a time, and the other color is just going to be slipped. So it's a great introduction to color work without anything that's super confusing. Now this pattern combines basic garter stitch stripes in those 2 colors and then a repeating mosaic panel so you can practice that new skill. It comes in 3 sizes and it uses fingering weight yarn. Then we have Chevron Cloud from Espace Tricot. Now this really pretty wrap uses increases and decreases again to create a chevron shape, very similar to a bias shaping, but more increases and decreases. Now it's worked in repeated sections of stockinette stitch and garter stitch, so the stitch patterns are very simple and very basic. And then you're also switching between 2 different yarns, and that creates this soft, billowy, light fabric. Then there's Camp Wilkerson by Caitlin Hunter. Now, if you really like the look of these bias shawls, this is another good choice for you. It's a bias chevron arrow-shaped shawl. This one's a good introduction to using increases and decreases that are used in the center and at the edges to create the shape. Then you have sections of color that are worked in stockinette stitch, so it's still a very simple fabric, and a section of simple eyelets that are worked with a stockinette background. Now the original pattern is worked in 4 colors of DK weight yarn, so this one will knit up pretty quickly. Then we have Transfix by Barocco. Now if you want something that's a little interesting and out of the box, but still fairly simple, then drop stitches can be really fun to knit. Now this wrap from Barocco is a great way to try a drop stitch pattern. It's just basic garter stitch. You're knitting every row, and then you have this fun technique for adding this interesting drop stitch texture to your wrap, where you're wrapping the yarn around your needle, sort of like a yarn over, but then you're going to drop some of those wraps to create a drop stitch. Now it uses sport weight yarn in 1 color, so this would be a great time to try a fun variegated yarn because those look really nice in a drop stitch pattern. If you're looking for even more shawl ideas, I've got you covered. This video right here explores other shawls still suitable for beginners, but in other shapes besides rectangles. So click right there and I'll see you in the next video.